asked just to put together a few thoughts on doing a debrief. I guess ideally this would be led by a psychologist, and that's mostly because sometimes you don't know what's going to come up, and it's going to be hard to cover everything in a short video. So if there is someone that can step in, that would be amazing. But I think that there's something really valuable about the process that absolutely anyone with good people skills would be able to offer something supportive. So in terms of how to do it, debrief, I guess, so the term debrief is often used, but that's not strictly what we do. So often debriefs are thought to be much more sort of investigative, looking into the detail of what happened, and that's considered to be unhelpful shortly after a distressing incident in terms of helping staff to process their trauma. So although we use that language, I guess what we actually do is it's just called holding a supportive space. So the main aim of the debrief is, we're not looking at details, we're not looking at problem solving, it's just giving a space where we allow people to talk about their experience of what happened. So the value in kind of getting people to talk about their experience of what happened is not about getting the detective work of a timeline or what happened when. We're trying to tap into people's individual experiences, bearing in mind people might have been exposed to different parts of an incident or of a difficult situation. So allowing for lots of flexibility, lots of permission giving, that people might have experienced the same situation in very different ways. They may have also taken on different roles. They may have different levels of experience. So as you're going throughout, as people are telling their stories, you're wanting to give lots of recognition of there is no right way to process this stuff, and that actually however people have experienced it, that's how they've experienced it. It can be very helpful when there are more experienced voices in the room and when they're able to show vulnerability. So sometimes with our newer staff, there is a sense of I need to be brave, I need to hold it all in, I need to be resilient, and maybe believing that that means just keeping it all inside and trooping on and being okay. Whereas actually what we know is people process difficult experiences far more quickly when we're able to not hold shame around how we've reacted to something, when it's safe, psychologically safe to talk openly, and that there won't be retribution. So this is definitely not about figuring out what went wrong, because I think that can immediately put people on the back foot. So what we do is we make it really clear that this has not got outcomes, this is not going to lead on to follow on things unless it's something that you agree in the room before you leave, and that's probably most likely to be around additional support that people may want or need. So at the beginning, you're highlighting that it's a supportive space, it's a confidential space, inviting people to tell their story and highlighting that their experience of the situation might be different to other people's. Some people may not have been involved directly, but may say, actually, this, it affected someone that I work closely with, or this is very similar to something else, or this is my worst case fear of this happening. So absolutely anyone that wants to be there can. So as you're going around, the idea is of you facilitating, but also giving space. So you're wanting to give enough space for people to come in. And sometimes those silences that can feel quite uncomfortable when you're facilitating, because it might feel like there's a pressure of, oh, maybe I should say something or move it on, or what are we meant to be doing with this now? It's when those slightly longer spaces are left that maybe someone who's been wanting to say but hasn't wanted to jump in just needs a little bit more time. So what's happening for people in those spaces is, whilst it might seem like a long pause to you, if someone's sort of psyching themselves up or trying to decide do they want to share something or not, that might not feel like a long space. So pauses can be really helpful for people to think about joining the conversation. I do invite people in if after a while, as in, when we've sort of done the rounds and a few people have spoken, if people haven't spoken, And that's again another thing, apologies if this is sort of jumping about a bit, another thing I'd set up at the beginning to say that you might invite people in to talk. However, people use these spaces very differently. So it's fine if you do want to talk, it's fine if you'd rather just sit and listen, and that can still be, you know, that can still be helpful to hear other people's experiences of the situation, but that you might invite people in, and it's just up to them to kind of communicate where they're at if they're not wanting to participate, but just to listen, and that's fine. Have tissues ready. Sometimes people get emotional, and in most debriefs it has tapped into something that's emotional for people, and I think there's something about coming together with colleagues, particularly when it's close-knit teams, and I think that shared experience of something distressing can often allow and give permission for there to be a release. So making sure that there is a sense of what to do if someone becomes really upset. So for particularly difficult incidents, I've set up at the beginning, if anyone gets upset and wants to leave the room, just to figure out who they want to let know, so that we don't all then kind of leave them or come chasing after them. Whichever way, that might not be what they want. So as long as someone in the room knows what would be the best way for them to be supported if they want to leave. I don't set that up on the difficult but not super distressing incidents, because you don't necessarily want to say this is a space where you're meant to get upset. But I think it's just reading the temperature of the room, and gauging where it's at. If you forget to say things up front, not a problem. You can build them in as you go. The most important thing when facilitating is really you staying the calm, grounded centre of the conversation. So you don't need to steer it, you just need to hold the space. So that's allowing people to talk when they want to, giving space, allowing the silence, helping people know when we maybe move it on or when to sort of stay with an experience. And what I try to do, although there's no hard and fast rules of how you do this, is where possible link things up. So it might be that people have had similar responses or reactions, and you can just say, gosh, that sounds like maybe you experienced that in some similar ways or maybe different ways. And what you do then is you link that to, you know, there's no right or wrong, and normalizing. So the reason you might say if something's similar is just normalizing for people how distressing incidents can affect us. So it may not be at all surprising if people have been tearful at home or if sleep has been affected. And that's a really normal part of just how we process distressing incidents. Our brain almost needs to churn it over and process it in its own time. And until it has processed it and stored it in our long-term memory, that fragmented memory, and it's fragmented by virtue of the fact that it's a distressing incident, so there's an awful lot of fight or flight going on, which interrupts our memory storage. Until it's processed, it will keep intruding. So it might pop up at unhelpful times, it might stop us sleeping, as I say, and there might be certain situations, people, places we feel like we want to avoid. All of that is really normal, nothing to worry about. That said, if it feels like that goes on for an extended period of time and it's really impeding and interfering with someone's life, that's then when there are additional channels to think about how to get people additional support. Don't need to raise that. I guess that's just if you pick up in the room that someone's really struggling, maybe just saying, let's catch up after the session, and I would primarily point someone towards their line management. I never go above someone's head and go and talk to their line manager for them, but kind of say, you know, thinking about how you would communicate. There is support available, and it's about how to access that. Being warm, being approachable, not trying to make people share if they don't want to share, and just allowing the space, allowing people to show vulnerability, allowing newer members of staff to understand that actually being human, you don't have to be super tough and not feel the difficult parts of this work. Being human is actually how we become really compassionate to ourselves and continue to sustain ourselves in the work. If I think of any other things, I will post or let you know, but I think that's a bit for now. Okay, bye, hope it goes well.